A reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah. The Lord God opens my ear that I may hear, and I have not rebelled, have not turned back. I gave my back to those who beat me, my cheeks to those who plucked my beard. My face I did not shield from buffets and spitting. The Lord God is my help. Therefore I am not disgraced. I have set my face like flint, knowing that I shall not be put to shame. He is near, who upholds my right. If anyone wishes to oppose me, let us appear together. Who disputes my right? Let that man confront me. See, the Lord God is my help. Who will prove me wrong? The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
All of us here have had the experience of hearing the provincial read out the words of the mandamus to us as we lay prostrate on the ground with our scapular in front of us in the vania, hearing those words of the provincial to send us out. The mandamus, coming from the Latin word we command, sending out. All of us here, having made vows, have experienced this moment of being sent out as newly professed brothers, friars, preachers, to our formal assignment, this moment of decision, of being sent. In today's reading, we have here a passage from the collection tied together, known as the Suffering Servant of Isaiah. It's tied with chapter 53, often read during Lent on Good Friday, as we know the suffering servant. And we hear the suffering servant here giving his back to those who beat him, his cheeks to those who plucked his beard, not shielding his face from buffets and spitting. And we think, like the church fathers thought, of Jesus on the way to Calvary. We think of Jesus on the way. We hear the words, I gave my back to those who beat me. We think of Jesus at the scourging of the pillar, not shielding his face as he walks through the crowd, the noisy crowd, on the way to his death. Now the question is, what made the suffering servant ready for such an experience? Ready to have that experience of facing his imminent death, passion, with his face like flint, trusting in the Lord, his help. What made the suffering servant ready for such an experience? And we read in the verse preceding our passage today, one verse preceding, that morning by morning he wakens my ear to hear as disciples do. When the decisive moment comes, and they will come, it is the experience of being sent. It is both a source of guidance and a source of fortitude in the midst of tumult. 20 years ago this morning, a group of New York City firefighters gathered together at a command post, and they received orders as their resources were allocated between the North and South Towers, where to go in their search and rescue missions. And earlier I watched a video of this scene. There was actually a video of them receiving their orders from the deputy chief in a building, and you could see debris from outside the building, and the firefighters were gathered together in basically a huddle, talking to one another, and the deputy chief was talking with them and sending them to their various groups, and they were basically communicating what they were about to do as they approached the towers, to enter the towers on the search and rescue mission. And it was especially moving knowing from the vantage point now that some of those men in the video receiving the orders from the deputy chief actually died that morning, as we well know. And one thing I noticed in that video, the depiction, as they were gathering together, they had all kinds of gear on. They had oxygen tanks. One of them was also carrying a tank. They had different equipment, like a kind of a crowbar thing for opening doors and hoses, and they were all gathering together. And one thing I noticed is that none of them were paying attention to their equipment, in the sense that they were focused on what they were about to do, their decisive moment, which led to the sacrifice of their life. Now, there was a day for each of them when they were in their fire school, and I'm sure in a classroom, when somebody was brought in the oxygen tank and the fire gear and showed them what it was and how to put it on. There was a day when they learned that, but in that command post, that wasn't on their mind. That was a decisive moment that they had been prepared and they had been sent to their mission. They had a sense of mission. And so too, in those that second nature of being prepared, with that those experiences of you could say mundane, like it might be mundane for a firefighter to learn how to put on an oxygen tank. We have experiences of mundane moments in our lives after the experience of being sent. So we've all been sent, and we also find ourselves in the Monday morning classroom. We find ourselves going to work, packing a lunch, getting ready, and we wonder how these are connected. How is the moment of being sent, being prostrate on the ground, receiving the mandamus, and the moment of decisive surrendering, just like Christ on the cross, the suffering servant, how are these tied? And so we are called to be faithful to those daily moments, those mundane moments, rooted in our mission, rooted in being sent and imitating Christ along the way.